events is the following. I'm going to start with Persuasive, and then interpretive reading, and then impromptu, and we'll take a 15-minute comfort break, and then we'll follow that by debate, and of course finally after dinner speeches. Please welcome our judges for this round. It is Andrew Kaplan, Fiona Mallet, Cara Jenny, Anthony Peters, and Linda Stoneman. We're going to switch this around and ask Adithya to come up first.
Our struggle against the clock is ancient. Back in the 2nd century BCE, the Roman writer Plautus famously declared, "The clock will cut and hack into my days." In the clock, Plautus saw tyranny. And thousands of years later, this tyranny remains. Productivity apps push us to squeeze the most out of every minute. The speed of email keeps us scrambling to keep up. We obey the modern commandment, time is money. But at what cost? Ladies and gentlemen, I am here to talk about a pressing social problem: the loss of leisure. Eric Hurst, an economist from the University of Chicago, says that we are facing a leisure gap. On one hand, the poor face crippling unemployment, and they feel too poor to engage in meaningful leisure. But on the other hand, the rich are time poor, overworked, overburdened. They feel too busy to engage in meaningful leisure. But first, we have to ask ourselves a very simple question. What is leisure? How does she differ from her twin sisters, laziness and indulgence? Well, to answer that question, we have to ask the ancient Greeks. Because in ancient Greece, work was simply a means to an end, while leisure, well, the purpose of leisure was personal satisfaction. So if any of you went to the gym to train for an upcoming chariot race, that would be work. But if you went to the gym purely to satisfy yourself, well, that would be leisure. I am standing before you all today. And if I viewed this speech as a means to an end, it would be work. But if I took the speech as an opportunity to speak in front of a group of brilliant and intelligent people, that would be leisure. But oftentimes we conflate the two things. For example, we used to play sports, but now we work on our technique. English poet G.K. Chesterton said it best: "If something's worth doing, it's worth doing badly." In my speech, I'm first going to discuss the 3 causes of leisure's disappearance: our fear of leisure, the blurring between work and life, and finally, our culture of materialism. Then, I will explore why the disappearance of leisure is so harmful, and I will propose 2 solutions. So the first cause of leisure's decline is our personal fear of leisure. Now this seems quite counterintuitive, but bear with me here. Because in the 1900s, psychoanalysts noticed something intriguing. Well, they noticed that on Friday nights, workers would feel incredibly excited and joyous about the weekend. But by the time the weekend rolled around, they would wake up on Saturday morning feeling anxious and depressed. It seemed that they enjoyed the prospect of free time more than free time itself. Because without the discipline of work, people often feel listless and lost. How do they cope? Well, all too often, we cope by binging. Some of us eat until we can eat no more. Others watch TV and surf the web until their eyeballs are burned to a crisp. And my personal favorite, shopping until we drop. Well, ladies and gentlemen, how does this differ from true leisure? Well, according to psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, True leisure must be in a state of flow, when you are so immersed in an activity that everything else ceases to matter. True leisure is blissful. But we know what binging feels like. When we binge, we fill ourselves for the sake of filling ourselves. It feels absolutely disgusting. In the words of philosopher Bertrand Russell, to fill leisure intelligently is the last product of civilization. But so long as we fear leisure, how are we supposed to fill it? 2. The divide between work and life threatens our leisure. And we all know in this room that technology has made our offices portable. The computer where you send work emails is the computer where you browse Facebook. The phone where you make conference calls is the phone where you play Candy Crush. Workers now face a grisly new order, a workday that never ends. And there's an ugly name for this ugly phenomenon: leaky leisure. According to the Guardian, 40% of us feel as if work is intruding on our lives. 2 in 3 Americans feel as if they have poor work-life balance. Leisure stands no chance. 3. Our culture of materialism threatens the very existence of leisure. Now, many years ago, great thinkers like Karl Marx, like Oscar Wilde, like John Maynard Keynes, predicted that in an era of productivity, we would have shorter work weeks. This would free us up to fill our time with more meaningful leisure. But I ask you, ladies and gentlemen, has this actually happened? Because if you look at our work weeks, they're about as long as they used to be in the 1950s. And even though productivity has increased, our work weeks haven't caught up. Instead, what do? Well, we're working long hours to amass more and more money, just so that we can spend it to buy more and more goods. To be clear, money cannot buy happiness in a store, but it can surely free us up to pursue more meaningful leisure. Unfortunately, we're spending our money on the wrong things. We're not spending it on things that fulfill us, but we're spending it on the newest hip gadget and the newest hip trend. Meanwhile, things like cultural activities, things like civic engagement, these are all on the decline. The Cato Institute, a think tank, reports that cultures around the world, no matter where they are systematically experiencing corruption and decline. Civic engagement is also falling. Last year in the United States, rates of volunteering were lower than they ever have been since the Great Recession. So if these are all the problems with the disappearance of leisure, the question remains, why should you care? Why is the disappearance of leisure so harmful for every one of us in this room? Well, for starters, our economies are rapidly aging. In my country, Canada, 65% of the population is over 65. 15% of the population is over 65. The other one would be a bit unreasonable. In a retired life without fulfilling leisure, life is nasty, it's brutish, and it's short. But leisure is no less important for people who are of a working age. Pew Research conducted a study when they found that 1 in 2 Americans are unfulfilled by their jobs. What does that mean? Well, we've been relying on work to fulfill us, but work isn't working. We need leisure to fill the gap that work has created. And we know what happens when people don't have a sense of fulfillment. According to the University of Cape Town, a lack of meaningful fulfillment during free time increases the risk of high school dropout. It increases the risk of gang violence, and it increases the risk of mob membership. Angus Deaton, a Nobel Prize-winning economist, blames a lack of fulfillment on the depths of despair in the United States, where thousands of middle-aged white men lose their lives to suicide, drug abuse, and alcohol. Our minds need leisure, and it is negligent to deny it. So if this is why leisure is so harmful, how do we work to defend leisure? should we solve this crisis? Well, today, I propose two solutions. First, we have to reinvent our work. And second, we have to revalue leisure. So first, how do we reinvent our work? A recent body of research shows that humans have a productivity ceiling. If we work more than 5 to 6 hours a day, we have quickly diminishing returns. Now, in the 1980s, Apple employees proudly wore sweatshirts that said, "I work 90 hours a week and I'm loving it." But ladies and gentlemen, we had the last laugh. Because in 2012, researchers at Colorado State University predicted if those employees worked half as long, we would have seen the Macintosh computer a full year in advance. But this isn't just something that companies can do. Entire nations can and are hopping on board. In France, the government has instituted the right to remain disconnected. This gives them the legal right to ignore their boss's irritating phone calls when they call them at 2:04 in the morning. My second solution to this crisis is reevaluating leisure. Now, this starts at a baseline education level. We students in schools are often taught just to meet specific labor market demands. But the demands of today probably won't be the demands of tomorrow. It's about time that we start learning how to cultivate lifelong interests. Stuart Watson, an award-winning author, urges schools to also teach the humanities. Because it's subjects like the arts, subjects like history, and subjects like philosophy that can serve themselves the most with the good life. Ladies and gentlemen, I truly understood the transformative power of leisure when I arrived in Cape Town. Because in all the stress and haste of preparing for the speech, I was transformed and I was transported into a much different place. And it took my worries away. During the day, the sun was so rich and brilliant, the hills looked suffused with honey. At night, the moon was so large and bright, it seemed made of something frozen. All of our lives' best experiences, from watching a sunset that's honey perfect, to reading a story that speaks something true, all of these things are done for their own sake. And if all we use to define the point of our lives and ourselves is the outcome of our labor, then ladies and gentlemen, we're losing more than just our time. We're losing our humanity. Today, I call upon us to reclaim it. I call upon us to protect it from the buffeting winds that sway it. Because beyond all the money, all the fame, and all the glory, there are greater things